Spell the knowledge from the lie. Do the knowledge radio. The place where knowledge is
Do
born.
the knowledge radio.
This is 3K.
Think tank.
This is 3K.
Hey.
This is 3K.
I swear that knowledge is born. It's where I swear that knowledge is born. It's where I swear that knowledge is born. It's where I swear that knowledge is born. Who ran, who ducked, who drew down, return fire. We're the warriors, the healers, enlighten us. I'm tired of the same old, that game old with an upgrade. I'm a sunbathed in the sun rays while my guns blaze and they complain. Devil, my level not attainable. My metal not malleable. I'm a man, didn't need that manual. Reparations is incalculable. Yeah, we want it in blood. Dead in the begging, heading to beheading. Metal to the meddling. Members is aggressive. Getting to the Armageddon. Karma, seem calmer when it comes to retribution. Caliber, catalyst in my clips and I use them on traitors and haters and the ones that spread confusion. Cause the devil's playground wasn't built for our amusement. Hey, meet me at the guard hour. Hey, in these strange days, you gon' need a strong counter. Spin like Beyblade. Impenetrable armor, Orient aura. This story, this saga, get gory before it get calmer. Keep holding that revolutionary posture. 85 gon' dip and dodger, but when they get monster, they turn into MC Light, earrings, and become door knockers. I'm irate, they pirate the culture, send them to Davy Jones' locker. It's okay. Let them think that you lost it. Be patient, this type of thing you can't force it. Play possum, but nah, not know about the road that they can't comprehend cause the language is coded. We plan ideas and we plan explosives. Make your pockets go from more bits to more bread. The portal done open, they can't close it. You ain't got a sideline, you could cause more risk. No set birth date, no Dorian Gray portraits. It's about to get ugly and these devils can't forfeit. Ancestral memories, so no I won't forget. What we building is an impenetrable fortress for sure. Every show is just like a courtship and my flow for sure. Tighter than your gal's corset. It's okay. We are the source, you can't outsource it. Even Spartans don't want no parts, Neff. What do you know? Before you know it, 3,000 wild Africans at your doorstep. Hey, meet me at the guard hour. Hey, in these strange days, you gon' need a strong counter. Spin like Beyblade. No, we will not cower while the rest they play safe. We will move with God's power. This is not for play. Honor my ancestors, play the Orient day. Peace to you, loved ones, stay dangerous and stay safe. AKAs and AKs coming to make their caves cave. Wreck the race like take case, stay dangerous and stay safe.
Brothers just walk up on me and they're just like, you know, you can just see the hunger in their eyes. Like as soon as you know what I mean? They was like, yo, you know, we a group and we think that you would fuck with us and you know, I'm telling you, like, we nice and just give us a fucking chance type of shit, you know?
Peace and Black Power family. Welcome to another episode of Do Not Radio. Placement Knowledge is born. This is your host. Knowledge Born Alive. We got, in my opinion, he might disagree with me. He might even scold me after this, but I'm going to give him his honest due. We have cinematic royalty in the place. In regards to uplifting and transforming abstract poverty and lack into pristine purity immortalized by the camera. As a youth coming up in New Jersey and New York, we were only presented to the public before rap music, which is now termed hip hop, in a way of criminality. But you saw fit in your infinite wisdom and your ancestral calling to take something that looked like trash and turn us into treasure. So you're forever treasured in our minds, in our hearts, in our beings for immortalizing those unsung in the bottom rungs of society, but in the highest space of the economic developmental plan. So it becomes my honor and privilege at this time to introduce some, present to others. Cinematic royalty from my perspective. one who immortalized the gods and gave us a power, a spark, and a light by combining the lack and the lavish of Black life in America. Our brother, our comrade, our elder, Brother Jamel Shabazz. Peace and love to you, brother. How are you doing?
Peace, knowledge born. Thank you for the introduction, brother. I'm well. Standing firm on my square, brother, and striving to be a light in a world that is so full of darkness. But I salute you for all the great work that you are doing to bring voices to this great platform. So thank you for your service, brother.
Definitely. Today happens to be the 47th year of what's happening.
Mm.
What's happening came on 47 years ago today at 8:30 p.m. And it was the first time many of us saw a black face on television, and let alone a black family. I know that the Good Times family was the first black family, but many of us caught a mixture between two things that we love, black life and something that was an early semblance of rap music, particularly in the breaking stance with Rerun on the same screen. So from the eras of the jukebox, post the black exploitation era, but you still saw the afros, you still saw the bell bottoms, you still saw all of the sights and the sounds of the funk era coming into what was something new, the rap era. So you immortalize different moments and aspects in history in time from one space or another. So I'm very curious to hear your story from your perspective as we meld these things together and as hip hop as we know it turns 50.
Well, I am a seed of the 1960s. I was born in 1960, a very turbulent time in American history. So a lot of the events that were unfolding during that time contributed greatly to my growth and development as a very young seed. It's through the visual language of photography that I started to grasp a broader understanding of the world. My father was a professional photographer, and he had a vast library within his home and photography publications. As a young child, I would look at those publications, and it gave me a gateway into the world. Back in those days, before we had social media, we had encyclopedias. So I would go through them, just study all the encyclopedias, all the books that he had. Back then, we had Life magazine, which is in a sense was our World Wide Web, because Life magazine gave us life. It gave us another perspective outside of our community. So as a very young child, I studied all these different sciences. I became very disenchanted in school. I went to Catholic school and I was being taught trick knowledge. And I knew that early on, there was something that was missing. I never really saw myself. Nobody was explaining different things that was transpiring in the world at that time, from the civil rights movement to the assassinations to the war in Vietnam. So I saw it. I was always seeking for knowledge. I had that curious mind. So my father kind of like set the foundation by his books. And I started to analyze every single book in his library. And at that early stage, I started to have a better understanding on the war in Vietnam. It was my first introduction to Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and the Ku Klux Klan. So my curiosity continued to grow studying photography. And when I wasn't at home, I would go to the library and I would just pull out stacks of Life magazine, Time magazine, Ebony magazine. As a young child, I just go through them, just studying, trying to gain a better understanding of what was going on in the world. Because at that time, my parents, they weren't telling me about it. So here I am as a young seed, watching the assassinations unfold on television, seeing the war in Vietnam every night. Young brothers in my community were dying in Vietnam and going and coming back, and nobody offered any explanation. So I just became one that was in search of knowledge. And then what really put me on a particular path early on was a television series that came on. Being you talking about programs on TV, it was a television series called Kung Fu. And when that came on, starring David Carradine, this Amerasian that went over to the East to study under the Shaolin Temple, that kind of like put me on a particular path, because it allowed me to see that life is a journey. And through this journey, there's going to be trials and tribulations. And as long as you have a sense of knowledge of self and purpose, you can navigate through the hardships of life. So at that really young age, I started to look at life as a journey I want to explore. And as time would progress, you know, when I moved from the projects of Red Hook into East Flatbush, you know, I saw the power of the camera early on. And it's really through the gangs at that time, because back in the early 70s, gang culture was all over. You know, in my particular community, East Flatbush, we had the Jolly Stompers, we had the Tomahawks in Brownsville, the Pearl Hells, the Crazy Homicides. Gang culture was everywhere. So it's very interesting because my good partner at the time, you know, his cousin was the warlord of a very popular gang out there called the Badass Stompers, which is a division of the larger gang called the Jolly Stompers that had been around since the 1950s. I went to his house as a young boy, probably about 15 years old, you know, and I was really amazed with his brother might have been about 2-3 years older than us, and he held the key position in the game. But what I found fascinating about this brother was his photographs, and he had these large photo albums full of photographs of the gang. And back then, I could say that the Jolly Stompers was probably one of the most sharpest gangs. Unlike what we see of gang culture, guys with cut-off jackets, with fur collars, with their gangs logo on the background, the Jolly Stompers were a very interesting gang because they were a mixture of African Americans and Caribbeans. So they brought those two different cultures together and formulated a very unique style. And they wore beaver hats, oiled down, Playboys, sharp skin, tailor-mades. They had fresh haircuts. So when I looked through these photo albums, I saw these incredible images. I saw the power of photography. Unlike the earlier photographs I was looking at from other communities, you know what I mean, or album covers. Now I'm looking at images that really resonate with me. And after looking at those photo albums, I realized then that I wanted to be a photographer. So when I left his house, I returned back to my kingdom, snatched up one of my mother's cameras, and I started my journey, you know, documenting my peers early on. This is like 1974. And it gave me a sense of power. It's like as I picked up the camera and looked through the viewfinder, it opened up my third eye to start to appreciate life around me. And I looked at it as a sense of alchemy back then. To have the ability to freeze time in motion was a deep power for me. Because prior to picking up the camera, I was pretty much living in a state of triple darkness. A lot of my peers were graffiti artists. I embraced that early on, but it really didn't. It didn't speak to me at my time. My whole crew was graffiti artists and pretty noted artists, but it was something about the photography that gave me a higher calling. It's like when I picked it up, you know, it's like magical for me. It served as almost like a compass. It put me on a particular path now. So a combination of looking at the program Kung Fu, now having a camera, now it also gave me the voice. It gave me an opportunity to communicate with people in a way that I wasn't doing it before. And then I realized that I had a particular power. And around that same time, I got knowledge of self, and that took it to an even deeper level now. Because it's one thing just to take photographs of my friends that was still living in a state of triple darkness. But once I got knowledge of self, I had a higher calling. And now I utilize the camera to document my life around me. You know, I use it to engage people in conversation and build with them. And what I want to do early on, I recognize that everyone I built with, I want to have a memory of. So each time I would get in the bills, I would take a reflection. And now that served as evidence of everyone I engaged in conversation with. And I would embark on that journey, you know, for the next pretty much 45 years, just traveling, documenting, building. But it was all about doing my duty as a civilized person and having evidence of the conversation and documenting different things that I saw that I want to bring back to the community to enlighten people. Because it's one thing to speak about what you saw, but now I'm bringing physical evidence of the heroin epidemic, the impact that the war in Vietnam had, the prostitution, and then enhance my ability to reach people, again, using the visual language of photography.
Listening to you add on, and if I was to look at your life in decades and 10-year increments from 1960 to 1970, you look at something like Mega Evers. This is fresh after Jamel Shabazz, brother Wali, affectionately known to the world as Malcolm X, comes home, joins the Nation of Islam in 1959, and well earlier than that, but rose to prominence around 1959. Makes his first trip to Mecca, even though he didn't. It was said he didn't enter into. So 59. Then you go from 60 to 70. The entire world is in upheaval. The entire world is affected with war, all kinds of things that are happening. Assassination of African presidents, assassination of American presidents, all kinds of things are happening, in this upskirt, towards that Vietnam era and assassination of prominent black leaders and organizational heads at that time. So you look from 60 to 70, and then if you look from 70 to 80, we looking at the downturn, but also the decimation of many Black Power organizations and the like going into 80. And then from 80 to 90, all of this is eclipsed by hip hop, going from rap to hip hop and, starting off in a space where knowledge itself was heavily given, and now you look at the same tools being utilized to raise a man from a dead level to a living perpendicular, to put a man back into the grave.
That's right.
With the same way sonically that the heroin and crack epidemic did physically, emotionally,
right.
Because the death and devastation of our homes and our families, we look at the same music that we utilize as a tool to fight the powers that be, to fight the power being the power that cause us to fight and kill one another in the same way Yakub's Forgotten Technology did. You see what I'm saying? So I'm just looking at the decades in between the spaces, and you still finding useful land to circumnavigate throughout the times. You see what I'm saying? Like, and not get caught up in the devil's civilization. I think it's remarkable. I know there were some things that were involved. I know the military was involved. And, your time as a corrections officer played an influence in regards to shaping and molding you in that fashion, reconciling things that were happening, externally. How did you deal with those things internally?
Well, I was grounded in the teaching. Once I got knowledge of self, I was true and living. I came into knowledge at the degree of 15, knowledge power, and it transformed my entire life. Like I said before, I was living in a state of triple darkness. I was blind, deaf, and dumb with no purpose in life whatsoever. My parents had just divorced, and I was really going in a dark place. But once my enlightener, who was once a savage in the pursuit of happiness, got knowledge of self and transformed his life, he returned back to the same community that he terrorized, and he came after me. And it's something that was very important because he took me out of a really dead state and gave me a sense of purpose. But even before him, there were certain teachers that came around me at that time. When I lived in Red Hook, there was a family from the Nation of Islam that kind of like pointed me in a particular direction. There's a sister who I grew up with that was lost found, and then she got knowledge of self. She became an earth, and she kind of like started to wean me off the foods I ate. She actually gave me my name. So I was very fortunate to have a lot of wise teachers throughout my life who guided me on the path, and like I said, I was sincere. One of the first lessons that I got was, what is the duty of a civilized person? I was going through her lessons, and I came upon that degree, and I said, that's what it's about. I finally in my life, I have a duty and responsibility. And I was very clear on that, that I had to go out there and I had to educate my people at that young age. And it gave me purpose because prior to that, we were just drinking and smoking and acting like fools. Now I got a purpose, and this means something for me. This is something I said that I will deal with this for the rest of my life. I will never fall victim. I'm clear on what it is I need to do. And each and every day, in each and every way, I'm going to show and prove and teach the righteous way. And that's what it was about for me. And that's what kept me grounded throughout my life. Even the idea of I stimulate life and matter. I have to live in accordance to these rules and regulations and go out there and save our people, because I knew that we were dealing with a very troubling time. I became very acquainted with hatred through the various books that I read. So it just wasn't within my main circumference. I was studying what was going on both in my state, in my city, in the country, and around the world. And I knew that we were living in very serious times. And I wanted to lend my voice and be a savior. Back in the days, we had a mantra called "It's Nation Time." And I believed in that. It was nation time. It's time for us to rise up. So throughout my life, I held on to those teachings and principles, from the streets of Brooklyn to the military, to when I came home, to going into corrections, to this very day and time. I was clear that I had a duty and responsibility to save our people. And I knew that we were at war. There was lessons called The Time and What Must Be Done. Early on, I heard a lecture by Minister Farrakhan, I think in 1981, 82, and it was called The Time and What Must Be Done. And that really stayed with me, because I realized that we were dealing in a very critical time. I started to analyze all the events that took place in the 1960s, and I realized that we were at war. And just think about that, as you stated before, about coming up during that day and time of the assassinations, the murders, the lynchings, and all that. I took all that in, and nobody explained that to me. So I knew early on that as a Black man, we were in trouble. One of the first books that I picked up that really touched me was a book that my father had on a coffee table called Black and White America. And it was a photography book. It was actually a photography book, but it was the personal journals of a photographer by the name of Leonard Freed. That book I read at 9 years old. So I realized that at 9 that I'm Black in this country, and I'm going to go through hardships because of the color of my skin. And there's nothing I could do about that. So I embraced myself for that journey, and I accepted the responsibility of being a savior, and I wanted to do that early on. And that's all I wanted to live in the cause and just do. Every time I connect with people, I wanted to build. Also, when we deal with the science of music, I was greatly influenced by music early on. Music fed my mind and put me on the path, particularly protest music of the 1960s and 70s. From Ball the Confusion with the Temptations, Marvin Gaye, What's Going On? That whole entire album fed my soul in 1970. Curtis Mayfield, The Last Poets, Earth, Wind, and Fire. That music really put me on the path. And then back in the days, Philadelphia International Records was like really dropping signs in their music. Gamble and Huck, those great songwriters. And what they used to do was, Kenny Gamble would write these statements on the back of each album cover, and I would transcribe them, and they became a part of my plus degrees about life responsibilities and things that were going on. So it was that music that really fused my spirit early on, because I have a profound love for music. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be on this path right now, because it's things I was seeing visually, but I needed that spiritual food to keep myself strong and focused. And it was the music that caused me to just carry on. Ain't No Stopping Us Now, Let's Get It Together, Love Is the Message. And of course, so many of the female vocalists, Phyllis Hyman, Gonna Make Changes. So when I would listen to that music as I was traveling, it kept me focused on what my mission was. And then I was taught by so many angels. I believe in angels that I met along my path. And one of the beautiful things is that as I renewed my history today, I was going through my many journals that I've been keeping since the 1980s. And I was looking at the things I wrote about the various people I met in my life who imparted knowledge to me. And that knowledge to me were gems that allowed me to continue on my mission. Because I believe that everybody I met in life, I met for a reason. Everyone has something to tell me. From the pimp, the prostitute, the brother doing life in prison, everyone gave me valuable life lessons that allowed me to continue on my mission to save our people. And that's what it was all about. But the reason why I remained strong, for so long is because I was true and living, and I remained steadfast. And each day I wake up, all I want to do is when I wake up and I'm clear on my purpose, what can I do to save our people? You know what I mean? And I'm grateful for the platform I have in social media, because of that platform, I could put photographs up that could stimulate thought. I could put a song attached to the photograph to make you think further. And I could use this global language to reach people around the world. And I'm getting results doing it now. Unlike how it was back in the old days of going on the street corner, building with people. Now I have another platform where I could reach people throughout the four corners of the universe. And it gives me a great sense of joy to know that I can still impact people, despite everything that's going on, that there's still people who have a desire to want to learn.
I love it. I love it. I know you mentioned the Kung Fu series. I remember in my study of Bruce Lee said that he jokingly made a comment about David Carradine assuming that role. He came up with the concept of Kung Fu, and he pitched it, and he said that white America wasn't ready for an Oriental superhero. He said jokingly to give the role to David Carradine when the opportunity came around. And he said it would be funny to see someone who didn't know any kung fu
Mm,
pretend to be a kung fu, a Shaolin monk
yeah.
every week. So because he was a ballet dancer, he
Right.
didn't study any martial arts until after the series was over. He said because of the series, he gained a profound respect for the arts, and he got into the arts after. So by the time the Kung Fu series came around, in my day and time, the legend continues. He had actually
Mm,
come back around full circle in regards to respecting the art. So I think that was an interesting one. I wanted to posit that. And then, going through your journey and, what it meant to be true and living versus what is espoused as true and living nowadays, it might as well be 379 years in between. You
mm.
see what I'm saying? For some of the people. So it's just a reminder of, you know, where we come from. Savage is one who has lost and out himself and living a beast life, a beast way of life, depending on how you got it when you got it. So this beast way of life is becoming a modality and the resurgence of it out here
Yeah.
nowadays. So I'm glad to see that some of us are still doing their duty as a civilized person. You see what I'm saying? So,
Yeah, like I said,
uh,
early on, each and every day, in each and every way, that stayed with me. You know what I mean? And there's no other way, but the righteous way. Early on, I just wanted to be righteous. I wanted to be a good brother, and I knew that in order to do that, I had to be true. And I lived that to the very best of my ability. I tried to follow laws to keep me strong, and one of the things I got from the military was this discipline. That I needed discipline to persevere because there was a lot of distractions out there. But I had to focus on what my mission was. And my mission was to try to save my people. I came home from the Army in 1980, and I came home to a war, where prior, see, what's important to know too, as we speak about television series, what had a great impact on my generation, which I like to refer to as the Roots generation, was that miniseries Roots that came on in January 1977. And it caused an immediate transformation amongst so many people that nobody really talks about. When that came on, think about it, the start of the new year, 1977, came on from that week. It immediately caused a transformation and people became conscious. Gang culture almost fell victim, almost dissipated overnight. It just faded away. Everybody became right. So many people became righteous. Just like that. They changed their names. They started to wear dashikis and afros and have a great sense of pride. Because prior to Roots, we had no real sense of knowledge of self. So that mini-series taught us a whole lot. And it brought about a spirit of brotherly love, throughout the 1977. I mean, the 1970s, from the point that it came on. And it was very apparent. It was a great sense of pride. You saw brothers on the street, how's the brother? Peace. It meant something. So we were on the rise. It was a great spirit of hope that I saw, and I felt good about that. And, August of 77, I went in the military. And I would be gone for 3 years. And when I came back, it's like all of that pride and dignity that we once had was now gone. And the vibe at that time was now jealousy and envy. And cats that once went to junior high school and high school with each other were now enemies of each other. I came home hurt behind what I was seeing because I had a relationship with almost everybody. Our students started to die. My partner, Lamel, who went in the military with me, his student was the first one to get murdered, Divine. My student, Naquan, would die later on. All of the young seeds started to get murdered out there because they fell astray, and it was very troubling to me. So I realized now that I had to use my voice and be a light out there and try to save as many brothers as I could. And there was a war going on everywhere. I couldn't believe it. I'm learning so much more about it today than I knew back then through my photographs, because as I produce the books and people see them, they're giving me a deeper history in who the people were. And I had no idea that this brother I used to build with every day had beef with this brother I used to build with later on in the day. They were arch enemies to each other, but I got along with everybody, and I realized then that I got to work even harder to save our people. So I took to the streets, just striving to build with people and remind them who I was. See, because a lot of the brothers, when I came on, they fell victim. So everything became kind of like a joke when they saw brothers that were manifesting the truth, because they were seeing so many hypocrites. But I wanted brothers to know that I'm true and living, and I did not fall off this path. And I'm here to remind you of your duty and responsibility. I'm here to try to bring back that spirit of brotherly love that we once had. And that's what it was all about. So they were very dark times. But mind you now, I come home in 80. There's a lot of killing going on. The 9mm is introduced. The Uzi's introduced. The 40 ounces introduced. AIDS epidemic is there. And then all of a sudden, I saw this dark cloud. And I knew something was going down. I wasn't clear on what it was, but I knew that I had to get out there and put in that work to wake people up. And it was that crack. And when that crack came out, it was over. Because brothers that once stood strong in the square were promised more gold for the labor if they sold crack. And so many gravitate towards that. And they took on a 10% mentality. You know what I mean? And it was devastating. It hurt my heart to see good brothers that were once sincere, but that gravitational pull of that money, you know what I mean, drew a lot of them in. And then I started to see the sisters that once wore 3/4 broken, you know, falling victim to crack. Families started to fall apart. And around that same time, I became a correction officer because I needed a foundation. And I felt that that was my assignment at that time. I had just came home from the military. I needed a job. I applied for a number of city jobs, and corrections called me. And I realized that that's where I need to be, because I grew up in a culture where a lot of brothers I knew were forcibly incarcerated. You know, I read the prison letters of George Jackson and the autobiography of James Carr during my time in the military. I knew about Angela Davis. I knew about Attica. I knew a number of people that were falsely accused of crimes they didn't commit. So I decided that this is where I need to be, because it will put me in a position to teach a lot of brothers in jail. So when I became an officer in '83, I went in there with a determined idea to be a light. And when I went in Rikers Island, I'm seeing so many brothers I knew personally from the street. And I realized that this is the best place for me to be, because now I got them and they can't get away from me. You have me for 8 hours a day, and I'm going to remind you of your duty. And I strove to really connect with the righteous to let them know, yo, look, you here. It's like a 15-round fight. You might have got knocked out the first round, but you cannot give up. You cannot give up your faith. You must stand strong in your square and educate these brothers in the system right here. You know, we got to put an end to the violence, the self-hatred in here, and I need your help to do this. So I took my role as an officer as just an extension of the mission that I was on, to be a light. And I was grateful for that position, despite the hardships and the violence and the pain, the misery of being in that atmosphere. You know, I had to be there. I looked at how Musa lived and his responsibility, and I understood that I had to put that ring of fire around me, and I had to go in the belly of the beast and do the work that needed to be done. And I did an interview earlier, and I was reflecting on a conversation I had with a brother who I inspired. And I felt good to have been able to transform the lives of so many young men that were incarcerated, because I took time to engage them and put them under the wing, because these are my brothers. And if I didn't educate them in the penal institution, when they return back to the free cipher, they're going to be savages in the pursuit of happiness. So my goal and objective was to enlighten them. When I looked at the transformation of Malcolm X when he was incarcerated, I knew that there was so much potential of brothers that was incarcerated that could be of a service to our community. So for the 20 years that I stayed on that job, each and every day I went to work, all I wanted to do was try to save those brothers, in addition to my co-workers, because what do correctional officers look like? We came from the same community. We just made different choices. So in addition to trying to give enlightenment to the young brothers and sisters that was incarcerated, I sought to give enlightenment to the brothers and sisters that I worked with on my job.
So was there a conflict in your tour of duty? You know, that's 2 decades of your life, in between how you supposed to view, you know, an offender. You know, is there a fine line? You know, how did you reconcile that, if any?
There was war every day. Every single day in which I walked into the facility, I was dealing with battle, you know, constant battle every day. I had to wear my spiritual armor. I had to read The Art of War, The Art of Peace. And I went into it, you know, ready to deal with battle. You know, it was a very racist system. You know, you had individuals that hated blacks, and it was a perfect job for them. They looked at them as animals, mutts. And that was really interesting to hear. You know, some of them had the us and them mentality, but it wasn't like that. You know what I mean? I'm not dealing with that. You know, I see where you coming from, and I recognize you for who you are, but I'm not operating like that. You know what I mean? I get that. You know, I get how you feel. You have hatred for the people. That's who you are. But I'm not going to do that. You know what I mean? I'm going to try to save these people, because I had conflict with one of my supervisors, because if you have, you know, during those days, it's 2 officers and 60 inmates. One's in a control booth with no weapon, and one's on the floor. And the person on the floor has no weapon. All you have is a radio, and you have your wit, your knowledge, and you have to navigate through that. So you have to treat people with dignity. In addition to the fact that I knew a lot of these brothers from the street, so I'm not going to treat you indifferent. So when I'm taking my house out the child, which might be 60 inmates, and I'm lining them up in the hallway to take them to the mess hall, which might be 1,000 feet, and all the supervisors and officers in the hallway, security, and I refer to them as gentlemen. All right, gentlemen, do sit up, laws in effect. Supervisors would hear that, and they would say things at roll call later on that we heard this officer refer to these inmates as gentlemen. They're not gentlemen, they're mutts, they're animals. And if I ever hear another officer call them that, I'm gonna come after you. So you just got to come after me, because I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to resign, put myself in a position to disrespect anybody like that. I refer them as gentlemen, and in referring them as gentlemen, they became gentlemen. They became upright and dignified because I gave them that. I was not going to go in there and abuse my power and treat people in no disrespectful way. And there's times in which you're going to go with battle with inmates who are going to hate you because of who you are. Because mind you, now, when I went in there was a horrible war going on between blacks and Latinos. And I was bothered behind that because I grew up in a community that we were all one. So there was a lot of hate going on each and every day. So I was dealing with all kind of battles. I was dealing with battles with my co-workers, with the supervisors, with the detainees. But again, I stood steadfast in my belief. You know what I mean? I was grounded in it, and I was ready to go to war. And the administration, they came after me. But I was all right with that because I was proficient in what I did. So despite the language that I used, you knew that I was right. You know what I mean? But you can't come after me for using language like that. And it did. I go toe to toe with you, which I did, and I won. You know what I mean? And I went through that throughout my career because I wasn't going to do that. I ran a very effective area, and I didn't tolerate that nonsense. You know what I mean? I wasn't with that at all. I saw it, and I saw it amongst both black, white, Hispanic officers, but I wasn't about that. I was trying. That's why I had stated early on that I was not only was I giving enlightenment to the detainees, but I was giving enlightenment to my co-workers, let them know you don't have to go that route. See, what people don't realize, I would leave Rikers Island and go to the streets of Brooklyn, right in the heart, downtown Brooklyn, and take photographs as an officer. The average officer ain't doing that. He's going back home. He doesn't want to be around that atmosphere. I dared to go back to the community where people were at, from downtown Brooklyn to Harlem to Bed-Stuy to Brownsville, to continue to take my photographs. The majority of images you see from the 1980s was made during my travels to and from Rikers Island. So I would leave Rikers and go downtown Brooklyn. And I'll go right in front of the Albee Square Mall and build with the brothers and let them know, yo, look, I'm coming from the Rock. That's not the place to be. The only way to go to Rikers Island is as a correction officer. So I would encourage a lot of the young brothers to say, yo, you need to get on that job. Especially the righteous, because you would be placed in a position to save your people and make gold at the same time and have a little bit of leverage in society. So I was doing that. And a lot of the brothers that were formerly incarcerated would see me and they would give me respect. Some of them even introduced me to their mothers, and their fathers said, this is an officer that took care of me when I was incarcerated. I owe so much of my life to him because he encouraged me to read and do the right thing in life. He became a mentor to me. And that means a lot to me. Like I said earlier, I was listening to an interview of a young man who I saved in my housing area. His mother fell victim to crack. She used to physically abuse him because he was the oldest, and he went out and engaged in petty crime to feed his younger brothers and sisters because there was no food in the hotel in which they stayed in. And he happened to be incarcerated. And I put him under the wing and guided that brother, and he gave an incredible testimony about the impact I had on his life. Even when he came home, I saw him on the street, and I continued to build and develop him, and he became a useful person in society. So that was the type of person I was. And I didn't care what the administration felt about me, because again, I was 100%. I went to work with the determined idea to do my job. But to do my job was to save our people and save as many people as I could that was incarcerated. And nobody could deny that with me. You can't tell me that I can't, do my job, which is to be efficient and make sure that people get the medical needs they're supposed to get, the educational needs, make sure they get a chance to go to the lawyer, whatever it takes. I'm here to do that. I'm not going to take that from them, and it's in the rules and regulations. So you can't challenge me on that. You could feel what you feel inside because you knew who I was, but you best not disrespect me, because I'm not going to tolerate that at all. And like I said, it was a lot of talk about who I was, because, in a sense, the spook was sat by the door in a good way. You know, I was there to be a light. You know, I wasn't conforming to the system. These was my people. Regardless of what you feel, regardless of the wrong which they done, because I dealt with coworkers that did a lot of wrong too. So how dare you attack them? You know what I mean? Because we are all imperfect. You know what I mean? A good man who's done evil cannot be compared to an evil man who's done good. You know, so like I said, I accepted everything that came with the role that I played, regardless of what you felt. You know, somebody called an inmate lover. It wasn't that. I was a humanitarian. You know, and I treated everybody right. It just wasn't black inmates. It was Hispanic inmates. It was white. I treated everybody with respect and dignity if you gave it to me.
That's peace, love. What about writing or compiling the books together? What was that process like from the first book until your present writings?
I realized that I needed to produce work that would serve as inspiration for brothers that were going up north for a long amount of time. Because I would bring in my photographs and share them with people, many brothers that weren't coming home. And I realized early on what the pictures meant to them. So if you're going up north for 30 years or a life sentence, the photographs meant the world of you. So I looked at my work as being visual medicine. So I realized in looking at the Source magazine back then and Vibe magazine, Double XL magazine, there was a missing element. You know, a lot of those magazines focus on the celebs, you know, but no one was focusing on the common person. So I realized in looking at photography books as well, there was a void of everyday people within our community from that generation. So I decided that I'm gonna put a book out there. So I gathered up the first step really was to get into publications. I went to the Source magazine one day and I met a brother, Eric Russ, in the elevator. He saw me with my portfolio. I went with no appointment. I just happened to go to talk to somebody because I felt that I had a body of work. And to my surprise, this brother, Eric, saw my portfolio and he stepped out of the elevator. He started looking at it. He says, yo, this is powerful right here. I had pictures from the neighborhood. The images that made up my first book back in the days were pretty much in this portfolio. And he looked at the work and said, yo, this is what we've been looking for. We're going to put this in our 100 issue. And we're going to give you a nice spread. I believe it might have been like a 15-page spread. So when that issue came out, the 100 issue with LL on the cover with the mics, it sold out almost overnight in New York. It became this sensation because I had everyday people in it, you know, from the neighborhood that were thorough people. They weren't no rappers. They were just official brothers and sisters from the street. The magazine went over very well. And with that, sound started to travel that I had important work. This is in 1999. Then I decided to take it a step further and I went to a publisher with that same work, no appointment. I just happened to go. And when I went to Powerhouse, I showed them some of the work. And they said to me, this is what we've been looking for. We'll publish your book and it'll be ready in 2001. So the fall of 2000, this is 2000 now, approximately a year later, Back in the Days came out. And that book sold out the first edition sold out in 2 months. The second edition sold out in 2 weeks. It was a collaboration with me and the publisher in terms of ideas to put together. I was new to the industry. I didn't really know how this thing worked. They looked at the 2 Latino brothers on the front, that picture, and they thought that would be a good picture for the cover. I disagreed with it, but they were the publishers, and I let them go with that. But I tried to put images in there that represented people I knew in the community. You know, my enlightenment was in the book. So a lot of people, it was my way also of honoring people that returned to the essence. I didn't want to forget them. So that was very important, a part of the book to me, to have a section that showcases people that passed away. And I wanted to produce books that made people think and remind them of the time. Because mind you now, the crack epidemic was still in full swing. A lot of individuals lost their soul out of selling drugs or using drugs. So I caught people at their prime. And I wanted to use this book as a form of visual medicine to stimulate people and get them back on the right track. And it did that. Because I heard when the book first dropped, there would be people in Barnes & Noble crying, just looking at the pages, breaking down, crying, because they saw the transformation that we went through from the 1970s and 80s to where we were at that particular time due to the crack epidemic. And it caused a lot of inspiration, especially up in the state prisons where they got it. And it's just what I wanted to do. It was that visual crack that stimulated a lot of thought and kind of like got people back on track again, you know? That was pretty much the process, you know, putting the book together. I realized at this point, I got to do books. And then that one book allowed me to travel throughout the world. You know, I never imagined that. You know, next thing I know, I'm traveling to Japan and Korea and throughout Europe and Brazil. And I'm speaking about it now. And it took my assignment to the next level because not only am I pushing the book, but I'm doing exhibitions. And now I'm bringing to light people I photographed. You know, I'm able to honor those that stood before my lens and break down their history and culture to people in those different countries that I mentioned. Because it was bigger than hip hop. Most people see the poses and they assume there's the b-boy pose and all that, not realizing that it's deeper than that. Let me break down to you this time period and what it represents. And I use that platform now to enlighten people about the conditions of Black people in America and what we went through and how we were and the impact that crack had on us. And it caused a lot of empathy. And I wasn't really even prepared for that. You know, it happened to me. The book came a bestseller, and now I'm traveling all over the world, and I'm still processing all this right here. Like, how do I now prepare myself for this new assignment, explaining this history and culture in foreign lands?
So the rehumanization in the way that, you know, Gordon Parks did, you know, in his day and time, the rehumanization, you know, the rehumanization of our civilization. You know, we were looked at as 3/5, we were looked at as subhuman. So, can you draw your parallel in the relationship and what it was like for you to be a recipient of such an award for such an iconic man and, you know, one of those inspirations outside of your old dad?
It was one of the highest honors of my career as a creative, because prior to that there was no awards, there was no recognition, anything. You know, so when I was told that I would be a recipient of the award, it was a great honor for me because I met Gordon Parks twice in my life. I started to read a lot about his journey and the trial and tribulation that he went through. His various books shaped my journey, you know, in terms of his ability to do documentary, fashion, fine art photography. His book, Half Past Autumn, became the roadmap to how I needed to move in this journey. And so that meant a lot for me because now he's physically gone, but the baton is given to me. So once I received the award, it was equivalent to the baton. Then now I have a responsibility as a Black photographer to use my voice and platform and my ability to create images to save our people, but to also create a counter narrative to the narrative that's being pushed about people. And I accepted that role, you know, and not only for me to do that, but I also have a responsibility to create a path for the next generation of visionaries too, to understand that the camera is a very good choice of weapons to use, and I need help. You know what I mean? I need the artist community because I understood early on the power of art, you know, because I was greatly inspired by the Black arts movement of the 1960s and 70s. So I learned the role that artists play, both photographers, painters, poets. You know, we all can play a role in the upliftment of our people. So now I have the baton, but I'm looking who's behind me to pass it on as well, to continue this mission to save our people using this global language. So I'm very grateful for what Gordon did because he was one of the first that really opened up our eyes. Even though we rewind, there was a James Van Der Zee and so many others that were there, you know, that paved the way. But it was something about Gordon for me personally because I met him. I never met James Van Der Zee. By meeting Gordon Parks, and you know, I met him on a day that he had a really bad toothache, so he couldn't talk to me. But I was able to express to him the impact his work had on my life, and he took his right fist and he raised it and like said, "Charge on, brother, charge on." And that's something that stayed with me. So I'm just honored now to be moving on the path that he created for me, and I have a responsibility, like I said, to continue on that journey, but to bring as many people along in the way with me. Because you know, back in the old days, when you ask a young brother what he wanted to be in life, in many cases he would say a rapper or basketball player. But in today's time, there's so many young brothers and sisters now that say they want to be photographers because of looking at my work back in the days. And that really warms my heart because of the impact that Gordon's work had on me and Leonard Freed's had. But now, through my works, I'm able to inspire another generation, and not only photographers, but conscious photographers that want to bring about change within our community.
Yeah, I was looking today earlier. In addition to, you know, this whole situation with like what's happening, Janet DeBose and Chip Fields, they're born on today. You know, they have the same birthday, and I remember seeing both of them on Good Times. You see what I'm saying? And they both got to play Janet Jackson's mother. You know, she was Penny on, you know, the TV show. So, you know, Chip Fields is the mother of Kim Fields and Alexis Fields. You know, from Living Single and all that whole time behind the scenes, and how many films she directed and consulted on, and TV shows and things like that. And Janet DeBose, her connection is all the way back to uh, what was the show? Uh, what is it? She sung the theme song for the you know with George Jefferson and Louise Jefferson, the Jeffersons. Yeah, she sung the theme song on the Jeffersons. So just that artistic creativity and the adaptability over the years, and the ability to put yourself in different positions behind the scenes and still make the art and the culture come forward. You know, in what ways are you, besides what you listed, uh, helping to mold the next generation of creatives in this digital era? You come from a very physical time. How are you able to translate those things into this digital era? Currently.
Well, one of the things that I'm doing a lot these days, and I've been doing for a few years now, is curating. I've had great opportunities throughout my life to do exhibitions. I do about maybe 10 shows a year. But what I want to do now, due to social media, I'm looking at the talent of so many brothers and sisters out there, and just so many creatives in general around the world. So having a platform now and a voice, I'm curating thought-provoking exhibitions. I just curated an exhibition this past summer dealing with mass incarceration, where I connected with a good friend of mine who was a former inmate who changed his life around, and he became a renowned photographer. And then I hooked up with a former homicide detective out of Detroit, and we did an exhibition dealing with our three lives: a former correction officer, a former inmate, a homicide detective, and we showed images that reflected our journey. And it brought hundreds of people together in our artist talk, where we were able to speak about our journey. There was another exhibition, and that show was called Perspectives, Another Perspectives. A couple years earlier, I did a show at the same location in Photoville called Perspectives. And I found a number of photographers online who had incredible work on Instagram, and a wide range of them. One sister by the name of Sonia Reyes, she documented albinism in Tanzania. So I felt that was an important subject matter to address. So what I was looking to do was look for photographers that needed a foundation to get their work seen. And at the same time, I wanted to get photographers that had an important voice that addressed issues that we needed to address as a group setting. So I was able to get a number of them. I believe it was a total of 12 photographers who didn't even know each other for the most part. And they all came from different areas. One was a young brother who was a police officer in Oakland. I snatched him up. There was a former mafia brother, who was in the mob. And he put down the gun and picked up the camera. And I thought that was an incredible story. And I put him in because he transformed his entire life. And now he's an empathetic, concerned photographer. And I put him in the show. And it was an incredible exhibition that brought all these different creative minds together under the umbrella of photography. And it was a deep draw. And then I did another show with Danny Simmons with the Rush Philanthropic Arts Foundation in 2008 called Positivity, where throughout my travels, I would meet different photographers that wanted to get put on, and they never had a chance to exhibit their work. So I took their business card and their contact information. So when the opportunity was presented to me, I decided to give all of them a call and say, yo, check this out. I'm doing an exhibition. I want to put all of y'all down with it. The title of the show is called Positivity, and I want images that reflect positivity. And I was able to put forth about maybe 20 young photographers across the color line, and we had an incredible exhibition. And in each of the events that I said, it helped to jumpstart the careers of people. So one of the things that I strive to do today is help give people the foundation so they can navigate through this very complicated and competitive industry. And I take great delight in doing it. I strive to encourage them on their social media feed. So when they post images, I give them guidance and critique. And I mentor as many as I can, because there's a lot, there's a battlefield right now. We need all hands on deck. So as an elder, if I can help guide you and show you how I was able to do it, that brings me great joy to see them out there putting in the work, because I'm not as active as I once was in the streets like they are. So the fact that now a lot of the young ones that got the energy and the fortitude to go out there and put in the work, you go do it. I'll show you how to do it. I'll give you a game plan. Go do it. If you want to do a book, I'll help you develop a book idea. Whatever you need from me, I'm willing to do. We have a saying, old men for counsel, young men for war. So as an elder right now, I give counsel to these young warriors that are out there doing important work. So that's pretty much what I do right now. You know, I just motivate the troops to get better at their craft.
I love that. We need that wisdom because so many situations we find ourselves starting from scratch because we don't have a through line. So and by the time the people have established or reestablished themselves, when somebody does come along with some wisdom for them, they don't want to hear it because they look at themselves self-made and they're so disconnected. So
Right.
there's no continuity in culture in regards to these aspirations and goals and dreams that we share. So I'm definitely glad for that right there. We have a few minutes left, so if you want to take the time to build on anything that you had on your mind or heart, if you have a message of empowerment, some advice for the younger generations who are getting into the creative realm, this is your opportunity.
Well, first, I'll say that we're living in a very critical time right now, you know, and as an elder brother, I'm very troubled behind the things which I'm seeing. You know, I had an opportunity, you know, to attend the Million Man March in 1995, and I saw the power of unity. It was one of the greatest moments in my entire life to see Black men from around the country come together. Bloods, Crips, old, young, you know, came together in the spirit of unity. And, you know, we were given marching orders to go back to our community, make them a decent place to live. And during that short time, there was a sense of hope, you know, during 1995 to 1996. And then things just went south again. And now, you know, I'm looking at our conditions and I'm really troubled behind it. I think about the incident that took place the other day with Kai Cenat, where this young 21-year-old kid has millions of followers. He's this influencer. And he had the ability to use this magnetic attraction to bring thousands of people together yesterday, you know, in a very interesting way. I say to the conscious out there that we need to be influencers in a positive way. We need to understand our duty and responsibility as conscious people to use the various platforms that we have to bring people together in the spirit of love, peace, and happiness. We're at war right now. It's not that war is coming. We're at war, and we've always been at war. It's intensifying right now. And social media is being used as a tool to dumb people down. And at the same time, create a narrative rooted in negative propaganda that's setting us up as a people for self-destruction. Because now we have access to our cell phones and we are documenting the worst of our behavior. And we're putting up online, and that's being shown all over the world. And it's producing a feeling of hatred. Because if you look at certain things that are posted on World Star, on just basic feeds, the fights all over the world. So we don't even realize that we are contributing to our own demise. You know what I mean? And we're promoting the fights now. You see two women that might get into argument, you encourage them to fight. Don't break it up, don't break it up. And all type of ill behavior. And I'm really troubled behind that. See, I studied what happened in Nazi Germany in 1938 and 1939 and how the Germans used propaganda to go after the Jewish population. We today in 2023 are using propaganda to destroy ourselves, because what it's doing now is producing hatred around the world. People, when I look at the comments to the fights, the violent behavior, the pranks, people are disgusted with that. And they're saying, look at what 19% of the population is doing. So we have been set up. And it's very troubling right now that we have become addicted to likes. Before it was the crack, now it's wanting to get likes. And look at what we're doing. We're fighting each other. There's fights in the airplanes, fighting in the airport. The worst of our behavior is being documented. Bad enough, we had the television programs like Jerry Springer, Maury Povich, and all these other programs, Basketball Wives, to show the worst of our behavior. That has put thoughts in people's minds to act even more savage now. So we, as the conscious, have a duty and responsibility. And it's hard now because it's like we have regressed. And we're in trouble beyond what anyone could ever imagine. We have truly been set up to the point where we are expendable and they don't need us no more. And I'm really concerned with that, you know, where, you know, we have embraced being niggas. We have been grafted into niggas now. You know, we don't want to be called gods. We don't want to be called queens anymore. We want to be called bad bitches and niggas and all that. And I'm bothered behind that, brother, because I remember when I was coming up, the people that called me nigga were the ones that hated me. So that word still pains me, but we embrace it. We celebrate it. We love it. Our women cannot. I find it difficult now to even call women queens now because they don't want to be called queens and they're not acting like queens. Something went wrong. You know what I mean? And we got to rewind to find out what the hell happened to us. You know what I mean? So we're in very troubling times. So I say to the conscious to understand your duty and responsibility, to use your platform to spread love, peace, and happiness because things are getting critical out here. And we have been set up beyond what anyone could imagine. And these horrible videos are being uploaded every day around the world. And the hatred for us as a people has never been as high as it is today, where people are sick and tired of us because we are showing the very worst of our behavior. In addition to the drugs that have been continued to push in our neighborhood and what it's doing to the minds of people, we are being fried. And all of it, again, is being documented. We are producing stupid television programs. We have fallen victim to stupid pranks. And we don't even care no more. We just love likes so much. We're willing to sell our entire souls just to get damn likes. And that's troubling to me, brother. So it's time that we need to wake the hell up because things are going to get critical. And I personally feel we're like on the Titanic. There's no reversal from this right now. But we got to remain steadfast and do the best that we can to be light in the world of darkness and in this foolishness. Enough of this nonsense. It's time that we build. Proper education always corrects errors.
Always. So I definitely thank you for your time. I look forward to having you on part 2 after I get a chance to comb through the book and see the reflections and hear your story. And there's a young director I wanted to link you with. He's actually at a concert in Brooklyn right now, getting with his camera in his hand. He's getting busy over there. So I wanted to link y'all together. And I wanted to come up and ask if you would be part of my documentary, me looking at the analysis of the N word and the B word. You know, with all of this supreme science and everything that's going on, I agree with the regression. The regression is here, and I think your voice would be very instrumental in the book and in the documentary. So I would want to connect with you on that.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. I appreciate it because, like I said, I'm in pain right now, and I need to get this out of me because I have seen a lot throughout my life, and I'm somewhat seasoned, and I've lost a lot of people. I got to say, I've lost well over 100 people since 2018. A lot of good brothers and sisters are dying prematurely. So I say to the listening audience, we have to take care of our health. The majority of people I know that returned to the essence these past few months, it was, of course, a poor diet. We have to learn how to eat to live. This is serious now. I lost some good people in my life that should be here right now. So we got to take care of ourselves. It's real out
there. Definitely. So if people wanted to reach out to you, wanted to connect with you, and also where to get your books and things like that, take this opportunity to direct them.
Yeah, the books are all on Amazon. So you go to Amazon. My latest book is called Albums. I have A Time Before Crack back in the days, but that's the best place. And Instagram is the best place to really check out more of my work and my creative process. I post almost every day. I try to use that as a space to drop jewels through my Insta stories and just constant posts. So that's just Jamel Shabazz. You Google me, it'll call up. My website is jamelshabazz.com, and I'm on Facebook too. So I have a page. You just Google me, all the information comes up. And if you reach out, I will definitely respond back to you. But each one must teach one.
Definitely, it's been a pleasure and an honor. I look forward to more opportunities to document your story and to help you get the message out in any way that I can. This is another one of your way stations, another one of your homes, God. So
sounds good. I feel that, Alex. I thank you for creating this wonderful platform. I salute you, and I look forward to building with you again in the very near future.
All right, God. Peace to the God.
All right, peace.
Yeah, priesthood. In 86, the devil raised the bar, but I'm a hurdler. And I'm the good thief. I sneak in your toxic house, the burglar. The musical Merkaba came to set free the Lucifer worshippers. Like James Bond 007, the soul of an old legend. Negative energy murderer. Good or evil, angel or demon interpreter. Kings with frankincense and myrrh. And perfumes anoint me soon as my birth occur. Like Ben-Hur, I'm indigenous to Gilgamesh. With brilliantness became the builders of the pyramids. Now we lost in American North wilderness. I became the force, a poor man's ventriloquist. On the island far away from home like Gilligan. Took us from our villages till we find our way back through resilience and our diligence. Through rags and wave caps, black fists look militant. In college remembrance, while living ignorance. Driving kids with innocence, dreams fly limitless. Straight towards the nebula, with cannon or the terror. Black boys face, we all in this together. I chase demons in my cape, my sword and my scepter. His brother Glow the Great, the lord of this era. Royal priesthood, gold plates and treasures. Anubis, my eye, weigh your heart against the feather. Carted Satan out your soul, lifting him out, he's on a stretcher. With my divine helicopter, with shocking propellers, outlines made of copper. The fortune teller, my dragon glows green like matcha. New York regalia, like Robin Walker is the prophet Walter. From the days of Iron Sheik versus Sergeant Slaughter. Blue around my garment borders, fringes, execute vengeance. Mathematics, Qurans and Taurus. Rock the head of Horus, rocks in the watch is gorgeous. Behind my will, it fell into the wheel, metamorphing. Start spinning clockwise and counterclockwise. On the outside, my car became a flying saucer, straight through the orbit.
Use my mind, lose my mind, I will use my mind,
Yo, masquerade killer, Michael hijack the sun, matinee thriller. Zombie apocalypse, a center for disease, says my tracks are way iller. Isodrenochrome cubes keep they cabernet chiller. And thought this thought, they don't want you to think. Knowledge is power, shock the flowers, make my aura look pink. To know the ledge, godly hour, push your thoughts to the brink. You can't even close your eyes, become a corpse if you blink. Where the oracles sink, I was born in the Sphinx. Copper DNA necklace with historical links. Hiding poison in the food, in the water you drink. Cause they raised done and they just biding their time. Throw food the lost tube coming down on my mind. Stab you with a light ray cause you was dying to shine. Then I disappeared like a truth post in your IG. Holy Spirit dripping like a ghost in your IB. Can't deport them all, we was already here. So get in tune with the voices in the water right here. You don't see the embryo in the form of your ear. Invisible man, I make myself awfully clear. Royal priesthood, astrologies is Lord of the Spears. Throwing platinum plates, you thought the flying saucers appeared. Yeah, they scared to wear their own face in the street. Deep elixirs, beast addicted to the taste of the sheep. On Harry Potter's wheel, the god knew arrange my physique. Kai, Elohim, Globin, the Arabian chic. 7 circles like the planets in the days of the week. Supreme math, solar facts in the language I speak. You brainwashed if you watching the news. Never make the wrong step when the law's in my shoes. The dream weaver make it seem there's no option to choose. Corona dope fiends, they be trying to nod. They in line to get shot, that's a fireman squad. Pharmaceutical, shoot to kill line with the gods. I cried for the angel babies that have died in the fog. Caught up in the crossfire like a panther in a Klan rally. Zodiac, they need these answers in my hands badly. Like palm readers, break dancers in the sand valley. I moonwalked on chemtrails in the sky. On the path to ancient Kemet, where the scales in my eyes. The sun and moon temple sitting on the side of my head. A million years I still remember every line that I said. Hermes Trismegistus, serve me the statistics. 99 attributes of Allah, 99% survival rate. Imagine the odds when you're the Neo, you're the one that made the patterns evolve. Another chapter to solve, why did Saturn revolve? Spinal column, I am Amen, climb the ladder to Oz. On a rocket to Nebula, the planet of the gods.
use my mind, lose my mind, I will use my mind, I won't lose my mind, use my mind.
Musical math, get used to the craft. Use my mind, turn the mic to a producer your staff. Trying to fit these odd Odd shapes in the box. Tetragrammaton, Tetris, see my face in the watch. Circle of life displayed in an arrangement of clocks. You can't be so diplomatic when you're breaking the locks. God Zodiac, Killer Priest, Wrong Priest.